Welcome to Policy on Demand. I'm Pat Brown. Another day, another busy news day in Washington, D.C. Today, we're going to discuss the recent decision to terminate the jobs of over 6,000 people at the IRS and the ripple effect it will have not just on corporate America, but on the business community at large. To break down the significance of the Trump administration's decision to let so many people go during the tax filing season, we're joined by Nicole Flax, who before joining PwC worked at the IRS for 15 years in various senior roles and oversaw over 5,000 people. So if anyone understands the true impact of this news, it's Nicole. Nicole, welcome to Policy on Demand.
Thanks, Pat.
So help us to level set. What do we know so far about these job actions?
So there's been a lot of different reporting. It seems clear that the focus was on the enforcement-focused jobs. So the IRS, after the Inflation Reduction Act, did significant hiring. They initially started in the service area because they were trying to correct some of the pain points that taxpayers had. And they got to the enforcement hiring later. So a lot of that did happen last year. And so the understanding is all of the new enforcement hires that were made in the last 12 months were part of this effort.
Got it. We've heard a lot over the course of the last 2 years, let's say, about a real effort from the IRS on compliance campaign. So how do we see the impact of these actions, these most recent actions on companies, maybe some of whom have been subject to these IRS compliance campaigns?
Yeah, sure. And I'm glad you said compliance because I refer to enforcement because that's the appropriation bucket that employees are paid from, but their jobs are much broader than what I think you might assume enforcement means. And I think in identifying what this means with respect to compliance campaigns, you also have to understand that the enforcement employees work on other efforts to further compliance, not just exams. So a number of efforts that companies traditionally, like the IRS, to have adequate staffing from. So with respect to your basic question, I think, just regular compliance campaigns, audit work, clearly there will be an impact. The staffing has been decreased significantly. Some of the employees that were terminated were actively working cases. I have some of those personally. And, there was some sense that it was happening. So some folks took steps to identify, let the taxpayers know that this could be coming, and some haven't. So I think there'll be, probably a couple weeks where folks are figuring out if their cases are directly impacted. I think the bigger awareness will come in the coming days and weeks when folks understand that these were also employees who did, APAs, appeals, pre-filing agreements. And so these programs that you may have thought more were service type programs are caught up in this. And I think there'll be some significant pain when folks see that there'll be delays and impacts to current work.
So you talk about APAs, advanced pricing agreements, PFAs, pre-filing agreements. These are obviously things, to your point, Nicole, where the taxpayer community really relies on the IRS as a partner to try and get more assurance around compliance and, frankly, to reduce what might be otherwise back-end controversy or something like that. So this is something that maybe over time is going to be felt. I want to drill down on that point a little bit more. Timing-wise, I mean, is this, you kind of touched on this a little bit. Do we start to see this in a week or two? How do we think this affects things going forward, things like quarterly filing obligations? Is any of that going to get caught up in this? And when are taxpayers going to start to feel the impact of this?
So I think it depends on what the issue is that you're working, right? So if you have an active issue with the IRS, if you are, if you have an open exam, if you're working with them on, some of these programs that we just talked about, and employees that were working on your case were impacted, I mean, clearly you're going to feel that. You'll feel that quickly. I think, though, even on a broader scale, it's unclear exactly how they're going to manage all the inventory they have with fewer people. But there'll have to be some effort in the coming weeks and months to figure out how that's going to work. And so it will have to be the case that work gets shifted, decisions are made with respect to how work is going to get handled. And so there could be a situation where there's no one on your case that was directly impacted, but because the divisions may have to, reshuffle work,
people,
that there could be an impact there. I should have also mentioned, it appears that the employees in the Office of Chief Counsel were not impacted by this. And so They do provide a lot of support on some of these cases and issues. So at least that piece should not have a direct impact, but they do work, they work hand in hand with the folks,
Right. I always think about chief counsel as they're the IRS's attorneys, essentially, for the people on the commissioner side who actually are the direct line people responsible for dealing with taxpayers. So obviously, still having the attorneys in place is very helpful, but I say as an attorney, there's only so much the attorneys can do, right? So, but that'll obviously, you're right, that'll have at least some ability to, those folks will have some ability to continue to provide help. There's been a lot of talk as well, Nicole, about the Department of Governmental Efficiency, or DOGE, and access to taxpayer records. What can you tell us about sort of where that stands? Maybe put that in context for companies.
Yeah, so interesting issue. And, clearly I don't have all the details. There's been a lot of reporting on it. I'll say traditionally the IRS has had, a very high bar for any access to the systems with taxpayer information. It's a very strict need to know. In the roles that I had, I never had access to those systems. Most senior folks don't have the ability to look at taxpayer information. And so it is of paramount importance to the IRS. I think clearly that, it's an issue of sensitivity, and there is a lot of debate around it. And I think it's something that, people are really watching with respect to what is the need and what will be done with that information.
So we're going to leave it there. Thanks, Nicole, for providing those insights.
Sure. Thank you.
And I have a funny feeling we may be speaking to you again about these things as all of this moves forward.
Sure. Thanks.
And thank you for joining us today. Stay tuned to Policy on Demand as we follow the latest developments from Washington, D.C., and delve into how it can impact you and your business. Until next time, thanks again.